In this module, we will discuss the role of protein in the mediation of the cell signaling response. Now, the cell signaling, it can be divided into three stages. When the cell, it signals or starts to communicate with the neighboring cells, there can be three stages. One is the reception, that is how the signal is received. Then is the transduction, how the signal is transduces or enlarged, and then how the cell responds to that signal. What are the stages that where it responds? Now remember, the response of the cell, it shouldn't continue forever. It has to terminate, just like a switch, on and off. The activated receptors, they turn on, the mechanism is G proteins, and the G proteins, in their turn, they turn on the effectors, those proteins which carry out the process what cell likes. To prevent overestimation or overstimulation, receptors have to be blocked from continuous to the activate G protein. That is the overstimulation. Whenever the cell receives stimuli, it can keep on receiving the stimuli and it will be overstimulation. So our cell has to maintain a certain level of the stimulation, and that termination response is due to the G protein. Now, again, to regain the sensitivity for future stimuli, the cell has stopped once by the G protein. Now, again, the sensitivity is regained for future stimuli. The receptor, the G protein, and the effector, they must all be returned to their inactive state. Remember, just like a switch, electric switch, once you turn it on and then you turn it off so that the stimuli is received by the cell. Now, the cell can also become desensitized. That is, once it is receiving the stimuli, it has to be desensitized, that the sensitization of the cell has to be removed. And the process which block active receptor, remember, there is active receptor, from turning on additional G proteins occur in two steps. That is the two-way switch or in two steps. One is the cytoplasmic domain of the activated GPCR is phosphorylated by specific type of kinase. That is the kinase there, the enzyme, it phosphorylates it, and this phosphorylation is called G protein coupled receptor kinase. G protein receptor coupled kinase, GRK. Now, another compound, that is the arrestin, that is the phosphorylation of the GPCR lead to second step, which is the binding of the protein, which is called arrestin. That is, these proteins, they are bound to that receptor, and arrestins form a small group of protein. Arrestins are called the small group of protein that bind to GPCRs and complete the binding with heteroterminal G problems or G proteins. That is, the GPCR arrestin, they combine with these proteins to carry out these functions. Now, desensitization is one of the mechanisms that allows a cell to respond to change its environment. Remember, when the cell is desensitized, so what happened? That this is the mechanism which allows the cell to respond to the change in its environment. सेल जो है वो डिसेंसिटाइज हो गया है, रिसेप्टर जो हैं वो नॉर्मल हैं, सो इट इज़ रिस्पॉन्डिंग टू द एनवायरनमेंट रादर देन कंटिन्यूइंग टू फायर endlessly in the presence of an unchanging environment. देखें ना, अगर वो सिग्नल जो हैं वो आते जा रहे हैं, लेकिन डिसेंसिटाइजेशन सेल को क्या करती है, अनेबल करती है कि वो उसको रिस्पॉन्ड नहीं करता और इट डजंट कंटिन्यू फायर ऑल द टाइम, ये हर वक्त उसको ऑन नहीं रखता, सेल की एक्टिविटीज़ को कंटिन्यू नहीं रखता. Now, another process which is endocytosis, that is the interaction between bound arrestin and clathrin, and it promotes the uptake of phosphorylated GPCR into the cell by a process known as endocytosis. And now the receptors which have been removed from the surface by endocytosis may be dephosphorylated and returned to the plasma membrane. जो कि रिसेप्टर हैं, जो कि सेल सरफेस पे हैं, they are removed and then turned to the plasma membrane again. Now, termination of the response is accelerated by regulators. कोई रेगुलेटर भी होने चाहिए ना जो उनको कंट्रोल करें, and those are the regulator of G प्रोटीन सिग्नलिंग. जी प्रोटीन जो हैं वो उनको सिग्नल करते हैं एंड देन दे आर रेगुलेटेड. द मैकेनिज्म फॉर ट्रांसमिटिंग सिग्नल्स अक्रॉस द प्लाज्मा मेम्ब्रेन बाय जी प्रोटीन्स इज ऑफ एशिएंट एवोल्यूशनरी ओरिजिन. ये एवोल्यूशनरी ओरिजिन जो सेल में है उससे ये मिलता है एंड इज़ हाईली कंजर्व. ये जो सिस्टम है ये लाइफ फॉर्म में, सेल्स में ये कंजर्व्ड है, ये इवॉल्व नहीं हुआ, ये अभी तक उसी तरह सेल सिग्नलिंग जो है वो कंट्रोल करता है.